Hey everybody, Bruce here with Traveling with Bruce. Today's date, April the 9th, 2020, and I have, looks like 9 different things to talk to you about in this video. Latest updates and things happening in the cruise world, in the travel world, lots going on. Thank you for subscribing to Traveling with Bruce. Means so much to me that you folks are subscribing to my channel, following what I'm talking about here. I thank you for giving my videos thumbs ups, very encouraging and very helpful for the YouTube analytics. And also those of you commenting, thank you for the encouraging comments and kind words that so many of you have been giving me. It's really good for the motivation and for mental well-being. Don't mind criticisms, just keep them PG rated. We are doing the best we can with what we have. And again, thank you all for becoming part of Traveling with Bruce, TWB. I love it. Facebook group page, the Traveling with Bruce Facebook group page continues to grow. Welcome one and welcome all. A lot of us hang out on the Facebook group page between my video updates, and I welcome any of you who'd like to join my Facebook group page. Just head over to Facebook, look it up, traveling spelled with 2 L's. You know, in some countries you only spell traveling with 1, so that's why I keep mentioning that. Some people tease me about that. Anyway, look up Traveling with Bruce, ask to join the page, I'll let you in. I'm the group administrator, and please keep it PG rated there too, and pretty well everybody does, which is fantastic. Also, Jennifer Aniston lookalike wife, is handling the Instagram page for Traveling with Bruce. A whole bunch of folks have joined that, and we're just thrilled. I think we're now over 650 followers. It's incredible. Thank you, everybody, for becoming part of the TWB family on whatever social media platform you like. It's wonderful. All right, let's get into what's going on out there. There's just a lot happening, and forgive me if I'm going from one topic to another, but got 9 things to cover. The first one I'll talk about is that the U.S. Coast Guard has basically reported that there are over 100 cruise ships off the coast of Florida right now. Some of them are in international waters, more than 10, 12 miles out. Others are within a couple of miles of the coast, and others are in port. The ports of Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Port Canaveral, Tampa, and others, they're receiving cruise ships in, usually for the refueling needs or sewage issues, garbage, food they need, because they've got crews. The total number of cruise ship crew members offshore in Florida on cruise ships right now is estimated at about 90,000. So imagine a city of 90,000 people that you have to have supplies for these people. They have to have drinking water. They have to have a medication in case they have any medical issues. They have to have food. They've got to have internet. These are human beings. 90,000, and they're all in a state of flux right now. Excuse me, because at the moment, no one knows for sure when cruises will restart, how long the shutdown will last. And so I get comments all the time from my wonderful viewers asking me, Bruce, when do you think cruising will begin? Just think about these folks. They're on board cruise ships. This is their job. It's their living. They're trying to send money back home to their families. They're also asking themselves and amongst themselves, when will we start cruising again with these passengers so that we can make them happy and they keep us going economically. It's a big question, and no one knows. But in the meantime, the Coast Guard has estimated over 100 ships, over 90,000 crew members, and the delay continues. We're now coming into the first third of April 2020. We already know that cruise ships will not be cruising until at the very least the 10th of May. That's some of the earliest dates some cruise lines have estimated. Others are looking at a later date than that. So that is where we're at on the delay and everything else. Second story has to do with the Oasis of the Seas. The Oasis of the Seas has been off the coast of Florida for over a month now. No passengers on board a ship, obviously. Only crew, but reports keep coming about the crew members on board the Oasis. Now, the cruise line has been slowly but surely, they were working on reducing the number of crew on board until about 10 days ago when the word came out that some of the members of the crew were testing positive for the virus. And I've just heard now that in the last 2 weeks, 9 crew members have had to be evacuated from the ship and taken to South Florida area hospitals for enhanced treatment against the virus. Yesterday, 4 more crew members were taken to hospital when the ship came into the port of Miami. Now, these evacuations that I'm talking about, they're all coordinated, they're all approved, they're all cleared by the port authorities, the CDC, local health officials, and they are done in the strictest of ways possible to minimize any chance of anyone else becoming ill. So you can imagine when an ambulance arrives at the dock, crew member is taken off. The crew member has got a mask on. Likely is in a protective suit of some kind. All medical people tending to that individual are also in protective gear so that the spread of the virus is eliminated to the greatest degree possible. And then they are transported in an ambulance to the health center that is dealing with COVID cases, and these people are immediately given the best treatment possible, all at the expense of the cruise line. People keep forgetting this. Some are conveniently overlooking the fact that cruise lines are paying costs to evacuate their crew people. They're paying for the ambulance services. They're paying for the hospital services. All of it is coming out of the bottom lines of the cruise lines to look after their crew members. It's very important to, for the morale of all crew members that, any crew member that gets ill will be looked after by their employer. And this is a huge deal for the family members back in the home countries where these crew members come from, and for crew on board the other ships. They talk to each other. They email each other. They text each other. They're all watching what we're watching. They're all following what we're following. So good on Royal Caribbean for that. Other news on Royal Caribbean, the Symphony of the Seas, the biggest ship in the world right now. 31 crew members confirmed to be tested positive for the virus, 2 of which are nurses that are on board the ship looking after ill crew members. We forget, and we do mention a lot, and we do follow it on the news, the bravery, the dedication of first-line responders around the world, not just in the USA or New York. We're talking globally. The global army of first responders have stepped up despite threats to their own safety to look after all of us. And it's the same on board cruise ships. There are doctors and nurses on board that have to tend to ill crew members no matter what they're suffering from. And it could be the common flu or influenza, or it could be this. And these people are stepping up, and they are totally unrecognized and unappreciated outside of the immediate world in which they live. But I wanted to mention that today. Another report out of the Symphony of the Seas is that 35 food and beverage personnel on board the Symphony of the Seas have been quarantined on the ship. So they are taking this extremely seriously on board every cruise ship that is floating off the coast of Florida, because, again, we have 90,000 human beings that are trying to keep these ships up and running and are awaiting better days so that those of us who are addicted to cruising can come back. But right now, again, to answer any of your questions out there about Bruce, how long will it be before we cruise? One of the answers I have to give you, there are many, many factors to get cruise ships up and running. One of them that is never really discussed out there is the health of the crews themselves. There cannot be a trace of the virus on any of these ships. So something tells me that before these ships will start taking on passengers, they're going to be doing a full-blown deep sanitization cleaning across the board. I know that right now, as I am speaking to you and as I've been making these daily video updates, the cruise lines have not been sitting idle at all. The members of the crews, when they come into port, they are picking up deep cleaning supplies, very strong antibacterial chemicals, bleaches, agents, you name it. They're throwing everything under the sun to keep those ships in the cleanest, most sanitized way possible, even with just crew on board. They really want to be ahead of it, because the safety of the crew is just as important as the safety of the passengers. And if a cruise line is not confident that their ship is safe for their crew, they're not going to bring passengers on board. I will say, and I'm disturbed to say it, I'm disappointed to have to say this on my own video, but I have viewers who are adamant that they believe the cruise lines purposely want to infect people. It's just a sad commentary. I don't need to hear this nonsense from any viewers. It's just not true. Cruise lines cannot afford to lose crew members, because the morale on board the cruise line will completely be destroyed, and it'll be next to impossible for a cruise line to hire quality staff to replace these people. There's just no way a cruise line needs to have ill crew members on board a ship and be perceived that they don't care, or that they're just in it for the bucks. I keep getting very disappointing comments from, again, a small minority of my viewers. I want to say again, 99.9% of you out there are fantastic. You're realistic. You understand what's really going on in the real world. But there are there's people out there who just do not get it. They think that the cruise lines will sail under any condition to make a fast buck, and it just doesn't pay, because a cruise ship that has to keep 3,000 passengers on board it because it's in a quarantine scenario now loses untold millions of dollars in revenues and incurs expenses because their reputation is damaged, and they're running into to unexpected costs that they weren't expecting. And of course, it's just not going to work out. All right, so those are the first three stories: 100 cruise ships off the coast, Oasis of the Seas, Symphony of the Seas updates. The fourth story is continuing in San Diego. It's about the Disney Wonder. The Disney Wonder ship, the last report I have is 38 ill crew members on board that ship, and they're being tended to. And when I say 38 members are ill, it's not like every one of them are on a ventilator, nothing like that. We're talking about crew members that are probably in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. They're strong, they're fit, they're in shape, because to be able to work a 14-hour shift for 7 days in a row as a crew member, you have got to be in shape. You cannot be like me, overweight, totally out of shape. You can't do that. And a face for radio, no way. You got to be presentable, and you got to be in shape. These crew members are likely going to, hopefully, all recover from this, and going forward, they may well be immune to the virus going forward. But I have to be realistic, and doctors on a number of these television programs, news programs, are being realistic when they say, folks, it's only a matter of time before millions and millions of people will have had this virus, will have recovered from it, just like another, like an influenza or a flu. Some will breeze through it, others will not breeze through it, and then some will unexpectedly pass away. But this is life. The virus is out there, and it's everywhere, and there is just no avoiding the inevitable. The question right now is, can governments stop the violent and terribly aggressive spread of the virus and really reduce the chances? And let's hope it happens. All right. That is the Disney Wonder story. We'll stay on top of that. People are, crew members are being monitored, quarantined, and treated, and hopefully that number will not get worse. I did read this morning the next story about AMA Waterways. This is one of those European river cruise companies, highly respected. They run a very high quality 5-6 star river cruise line, the best of the best. They're not cheap either, but you really do get what you're paying for with AMA. They just announced that all of their river cruises are suspended until June 30th. So there will not be any AMA sailings in May or June. The earliest will be July. We'll stay on top of the timing for river cruise ships in Europe. Next story, Costa Cruises, owned by Carnival. Costa Cruises is known for, most of their cruises are in the Mediterranean, in northern Europe in the summertime. They will come across the Atlantic to South America because they have a huge following out of Brazil, Argentina, Spain, Portugal, Italy, France. The Europeans love Costa Cruises, and those are the two areas that they really do a lot of business in. They also have ships in the Caribbean area, of course, but they have announced as of this morning that they are suspending all sailings now until May the 30th. So the earliest cruises for Costa will now be June, and that only can happen if European airlines are up and running, train services up and running, ports open up, and this might be optimistic at this point. If AMA figures they can't start till July, I don't know how Costa thinks they can start in June, but every cruise line is announcing their schedule and their adjustments as the days go by. Next story has to do with two cruise ships in Australia. Carnival has the Carnival Spirit and the Carnival Splendor. They're based there, and the cruise line has announced that these two ships are now going to be utilized to repatriate crew members back to their home countries. Again, this is a realistic approach by Carnival. They know deep down inside that cruising is not going to start up in 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now, and they've got to get their crews home. Many reasons for it, some economic, some humanitarian, and some just practical. Carnival, like other cruise lines, will likely restart cruising when they can, but only with a limited number of ships, and they will gradually bring their fleets back up to full capacity. But in the meantime, there is no likelihood of an early start to cruising in Asia, Australia, New Zealand, in that entire region, Oceania, or the ocean area there. So Carnival has decided to send the Carnival Spirit to Manila in the Philippines. They're going to send the Splendor to Bali and Jakarta in Indonesia. They've already and are already transferring crew between the two ships to get Filipinos and Indonesians back to where they come from. And they're looking now for clearance from India to return and repatriate crew members to India. So there's a lot of logistics being worked out here that we don't know about, we don't see, we're never going to know about, but I can tell you there are emails and phone calls and literally representatives from the cruise line visiting various embassies and coordinating with these countries the ability of these ships to sail into these areas with their nationals to return them. And the Philippines is very eager to return their citizens back home, as are Indonesia for their citizens, as is Thailand, and obviously India. So that whole region there, they will receive these ships to allow these crew members off. And of course, once they get off the ship, they'll immediately go into a quarantine or self-isolation, and that'll be coordinated with each country on their own. One more story, Holland America. The two ships in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, the Holland America Zaandam and the Holland America Rotterdam. We were following these ships now for 2 weeks, where they couldn't get through the Panama Canal and come into Florida. No country would let them offload passengers. The Zaandam transferred passengers, healthy passengers, from its ship over to the Rotterdam, and shifted all passengers to only balcony type rooms so that everyone could get fresh air and be quarantined in a little more comfort, rather than have some people in inside rooms and ocean view rooms and so on. The ships made it through the Panama Canal, as you know. They got to Fort Lauderdale, and for the last week now, healthy passengers who have been rescreened have been slowly but surely taken to airports in southern Florida for charter flights back to where they've come from. Canadians have been evacuated, the UK passengers, and so on. But I've heard this morning that there are now only 29 passengers left to be taken off the ships. All the passengers that are left to go are on the Rotterdam only. All ill passengers are being quarantined, I believe, off the ships, but I'm not 100% sure. The crews still remain on the ships, except for any very ill crew members that had to be taken to area hospitals, again, at the cost of the cruise line, which is Carnival. Carnival owns Holland America. But on the Rotterdam, there are 29 passengers and 24 contract staff members that are looking to be transported to their home bases, home countries. So 53 only left to be removed. The Zaandam has now been moved from Fort Lauderdale to another location. I can't tell you exactly where it is, but the ship is now going into a deep sanitization. Crew will still remain on board. We don't know what the status will be about repatriating them yet. We'll hear about that soon. And I don't have any numbers of any ill crew and that type of thing, but we'll hear more later. The Rotterdam, once it completes its disembarkation procedures, it too will then be in for a deep sanitization as well. And I can imagine that over the next month or so, both ships will be reducing the number of crew on board. They'll repatriate people back to their home countries, again, after all that paperwork and clearance is done with charter flights and everything else. So lots of logistics being done behind the scenes that we don't see on a daily basis. All right, well, there you go. 9 different stories. 100 cruise ships off the coast of Florida. Oasis of the Seas has now had 9 crew members taken to area hospitals in Florida, and they're watching for more illnesses there. The Symphony of the Seas is dealing with ill crew members, and they have a quarantine procedure in place for a number of them. We have 38 people ill on the Disney Wonder in San Diego. We have AMA Waterways suspending river cruises in Europe till the end of June. Costa won't start sailing until June the 1st at the earliest. The Carnival Spirit and Splendor are going to sail crew members home to the Philippines, to Indonesia, and now looking to go to India. Holland America, Zaandam, Rotterdam, transferring passengers and getting them out. The last story I just noticed, I have one more for you. Hong Kong. All arriving passengers coming into Hong Kong by air now must go through a mandatory testing procedure for the virus the minute they get off the planes. They are basically taken onto buses. They go to a health center near the airport. They're then tested there. The passengers who are showing no immediate signs of distress are then immediately transported to the Hong Kong Asia World Convention Center for a mandatory 14-day quarantine period before they're allowed out. Those who are exhibiting any symptoms at that moment, a fever or anything like that, they're immediately taken to area hospitals for a 14-day quarantine there and treatment. Any passengers that become ill at the convention center have any signs of the virus, and they're tested daily, likely several times a day during the quarantine, will be immediately transferred out to area hospitals. Hong Kong is not kidding when they say, oh yeah, you can fly here. But when you get here, you're immediately placed in a quarantine at the very, very least, and it's 2 weeks mandatory, no exceptions. So my recommendation is don't fly to Hong Kong right now for a holiday. You're not going to see very much other than the inside of a room for 2 weeks at the minimum. So that is the kind of procedures that are now beginning to show up in various countries. I think this is going to become more and more common. And again, this answers again, a question that people ask me about. Bruce, when do you think we're going to be cruising again? With these kinds of protocols in place, like Hong Kong has, there will be no cruises, because how many passengers are going to want to be in a 14-day quarantine before they can even get on a ship? Once you get off a ship, you know you're going to have a 14-day quarantine once you get off a ship. Who has 5 weeks to take a 1-week cruise? I don't know of anybody. And at this point, from what I can tell you, passengers arriving in Hong Kong don't have to pay for this service. But don't be surprised if that ends sooner rather than later. It'll get to the point where you get on an airplane to fly to a city whatever, and you land there, you have already agreed, and you may have already paid a deposit on your credit card for a 2-week quarantine cost. And you might be liable for hospitalization fees on top of that, if necessary. Now, think about that, people. How about arriving in Washington, D.C. or L.A. or Seattle or Denver, wherever, and you know you might be in a hospital for 2 weeks because you're displaying a fever when you land. And what are we talking about? $2,000 a day? $5,000 a day? $10,000 a day? What's the cost of a hospital in America if you're not insured? My goodness. Impossible. There will be no cruising until you can freely fly and come and go internationally. There just won't be any cruises. Sorry. And of course, there won't be any holiday tours either. There won't be any all-inclusive resort visits anywhere. Everything is shut down until this virus has been really suppressed. And we still are talking about the fact that there is no vaccine. There is no miracle cure yet. We're just dealing with what it is. And it is at the moment an uncontrolled, unable to be stopped virus at the moment, other than isolation. We really have very few tools at our disposal to protect ourselves. So anyway, those are the facts. That's the story. Again, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for the thumbs ups. Thank you for the comments. Joining me on Facebook. I love it. Same on Instagram. Thank you all. We'll talk to you later. Have a great day. Stay warm. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And we'll talk to you next time, everybody. Bye for now.